My name is Carol Cober, and I live in Maryland, and I go to Sandy Spring monthly meeting. And I'm really happy to be here in this particular show, Rooted in Story, because I'm a firm believer in the importance of sharing our stories. I'm both a painter and a poet, and I do all kinds of painting in watercolor, oil, acrylic, and collage. And sometimes I even use words, but it's all about sharing either an inner experience or something I've seen. I started doing art as a child. Many people find joy when they're in their childhood. And I used to draw on a gigantic blackboard with my best friend in multiple colored chalk, and after dinner every night I'd make up my own fairy stories and write about it and draw about it. But as an adult I took a lot of classes, and then later I had losses, and I found that painting was a very specific way to slow down, to pay attention to the world, and to be playful. I do intuitive process painting, and it rests on being creative in the moment, being playful, thinking outside of the box. And so that whimsical kind of way helped to nourish more joy, which was really important to me, feeling more content in my life, more joyful in my life. I also paint in a way that takes a lot of attention in terms of like a contemplative practice. Some of you may have a mindfulness practice. I find that painting can be very mindful, and it allows me to tap into that inner listening that we talk about in Quaker life, that I'm listening within and then in that process creating from there. So I wanted to share with you today my recommendations for pacing, that if you slow down and be curious and pay attention to the world around you and be courageous enough to experiment, I think you might enjoy the process of painting. And I hope you will talk to some of the artists that you see here. And that's pretty much it. I hope you'll enjoy combining your spiritual practice and your art making practice. Thank you.
My name is Lurine Caputo, and I'm speaking to you all from South America. My primary artistic practice in reality is the written word, mainly poetry, but also narratives based on my journeys through Latin America. Visual art is a secondary and accidental and separate means of expression. Many of my drawings are meditations. In this one, I started with the spirals, and the spirals began to emerge as 4 principal elements. You have the sea, which is water. You have the night sky, which is air. And to the left begins the spiral, that is fire. And in the right side, you have earth with plants and flora. Why are they called talking trees? It's another meditation. I base this, I suppose, on what recent research has shown, or studies of forests, that the trees communicate with each other. And that is why there is only one line that forms the outline of all of the trees. Spirit has a task for each of us to do in this lifetime. My task in this lifetime is to use my creative talents to educate, affirm, and inspire, to sow affirmation of common experiences or feelings, many that are oftentimes hushed by society or those that hold the reins of power, to inspire people to create, to join in community, or to take action.
I'm Claire Simon, and I'm a member of the Montclair Monthly Meeting in Montclair, New Jersey. From the time I can remember, early childhood even, I felt a need to entertain myself in some way. And somehow in school, they gave us paper and crayons, and I started drawing, and I loved it. Hunter College, I was a BFA, fine arts. And then New York City offered me a deal. They paid for my courses, my college at Columbia Teachers College, right, if I signed on to be a art or be a teacher for 3 years in New York City public schools after I graduated. The process fascinated me. You start with a hard ground, you carve out your lines, you put it in the acid for a certain amount of time, you take it out, you look at it. You want to put more lines, put more lines, put it back in the acid until you're satisfied. Then there was the aqua tint. My work in creating whatever visually is a spiritual practice, like sitting in worship. To gather an idea, just the way you might from your gut in meeting, feel something rising.
Well, after I married Jean, we took a plein air course, and I thought maybe it would be something we could do together. That didn't work. He wanted to paint buildings. I wanted to paint something else. So it wasn't something we could do together. When we moved to Penswood, there was a drawing class. And I said, "Oh, this is fun for me." When I was young, I painted alongside my dad. He was an amateur oil painter, and his main subject was the stage point. It was the vacation spot. In about 2021, Isali Krause, a fellow resident here at Penswood, asked me to illustrate a short book she had written, she called My Own Skies. So a lot of these paintings you see are to illustrate that book. She has since died, but I have decided to go ahead and try to complete the work. And the favorite stars and the Pittsburgh smog and searchlights were painted for that book. And it's definitely stretched me. I'm painting buildings. I never could draw a straight line. And I want to get back to painting people.
I am Rebecca Ross. I am a member of Reading Monthly Meeting in Reading, Pennsylvania. I have been making and showing paintings and drawings for over 40 years. While getting my MFA in painting and drawing in the 1980s, I developed an interest in spirituality. My early graduate work and the majority of my artwork since getting out of school have been religious and spiritual in nature. While getting my undergraduate BFA in art, I became interested in art history and also took 2 history courses about early Christianity. Eventually, I wanted to incorporate these interests into my studio artwork. In 1984, I had 2 profound spiritual experiences that further fed my interest. The series shown here was done from 1990 to 2019. The basis for this series are religious masterworks. In 1989, while giving a lecture on Rembrandt, I had the idea of using one of his figure drawings as a departure point for my own acrylic painting. I like Rembrandt's use of both figure groups and light. Many of Rembrandt's drawings leave a lot to the imagination, so they are good departure points. Italian Renaissance and Northern Renaissance works are also departure points for much of this series. Working a full-time job plus commuting, I realized it was more practical for me to use pastels instead of dealing with the setup and cleanup of paint. I developed a scratchboard technique using oil pastels with an undercoat of wax crayons, which allowed me to work on a piece even if I only had 15 or 20 minutes. The works shown here are made on a heavy archival paper called museum board. The base coat is fluorescent crayons, neon crayons, and glitter crayons. I cover the first layer with Cray Paws and other brands of oil pastel. Then I draw with pen nibs made from scratchboard, combs, razor blades, and map making tools. I also draw with the oil pastels, so the technique is both additive and subtractive, much like oil painting. This series combines my interest in studio art, modernism, history, and art history.
My name is Lucy Julia Hale, and I live in Cave Spring, Georgia. I am actually on the Trail of Tears for Georgia, right outside my window. And I have been a member of several meetings, but none are now available to me because I really don't feel comfortable driving 2 hours away in Atlanta or Chattanooga, the only ones close by. This is Auto Extension Graveyard. And it is a witness to how I feel that our country has become beholden in a way that is dangerous and possibly fatal to our machines, especially automobiles, which we see as persona. And you'll see in this work that they seem crazed. The persona are not stable, they're not reliable, and they are junked, but they represent of turning away from natural, God-given, if you talk in that kind of language, or nature, blessings, to something that's a blessing that comes with a lot of danger. This is the time of deadly hats. It did not directly refer to any political party that has been identified with hats. I was thinking about the Quaker refusal to honor hats because of the dangers in honoring hats. I love surrealists, and I love those German expressionists who portrayed the devolution of Germany as it became Nazi. And I loved them when I was in junior high. And that's the source of most of my work. The people I really loved were like Max Beckmann and others who, they said, this is the devolution of the body politic. My brother was draftable and about to be drafted to go to the war in Vietnam. And he is a quite courageous person. I think everybody knows that. But he absolutely did not want to go and kill people for the war in Vietnam. And I was afraid that even though he is a strong person, that it would break him and that it would be something. Of course, I was concerned about people he might kill, but I was also concerned it might just destroy him. And the Quaker meeting in Atlanta at great risk saved my brother from having to compromise himself in a way that might have destroyed him by becoming a soldier in Vietnam. I hope that people get from my artwork that it is focused on witnessing, and I believe that draw to witnessing is directly related to growing up in the Deep South when I did, which was right when, at the cusp of when some civil rights legislation was beginning. I'd like for people to know that it's important to use art, especially visual art that is in some way representational, the way mine is, to help people see things that they look at and don't see.
Hi everybody, I'm Jennifer Elam, and I want to talk to you today a little bit about some work I've been doing. I've been writing a book called Dancing Through the Fires, and I also have some paintings that are in that book, and I want to share those paintings with you today. Just a moment about the stories of the book. The book is rooted in stories that are mine, stories that are other people's, and the book came about because I was asked to write personal narrative about using creativity, and I call it co-creativity, to address grief and trauma. I feel like creativity, co-creativity, grief, and trauma are soulmates. They go together. And in the work I do, we work with both. I created a workshop that I did for a couple of years called Mediating Trauma Through Creative Expression. And that workshop came about through the thinking that trauma is a story that's forgotten how to dance, and we need to teach it to move again. So my own story coming through traumas, there's several of them in the book, and I start the book with talking about my own development of my own creativity. And it starts with the story of being in second grade, my second grade teacher telling me that art is for talented people and I'm not one of them. So I go the academic route and get to be a psychologist and have a great career. But then I go to Pendle Hill, Center for Quakerism outside of Philadelphia, and there I worked with my mentor, Sally Palmer, and my art, well, it developed in two parts. I was a psychologist, a school psychologist for preschoolers for 13 years. And I watched those 3-year-olds do their painting. And they were doing it, and I thought, I can do that. Just put the paint on the paper and play in it. So I did it. And in the studio at Pendle Hill, what came was that along with playing, we pray. So the art came to be something that I did to express my spirituality. Playing and praying. So I want to go through some paintings here that are a few of the paintings in the book that go through the stories of not only my addressing my own traumas through creativity and co-creativity. By that I mean creating with the divine and with each other. So co-creating to address grief and trauma. So I think I'll stop right there and let you see some of the paintings. Okay, this first painting I call The Universe Cracks Open to Bring New Life Possibilities. Sally, my mentor, always told us that when the art comes through our fingers, we're to honor it. This one I made in 2015, and I didn't like it because the paint cracked. So I put it in the basement, it sat for a while. But when I moved to Kentucky, I loved it, and I called it The Universe Cracks Open. Then the cracked paint is perfect. This one is called My Spirituality Blossoms, and I dedicate it to my second grade teacher, the one who taught me that I was not talented and I chose a different life. This one is a painting that was done by my friend Kim and myself. I talk about her story in my book. We went to the Pine Barrens together. She ended up getting Lyme disease from all the ticks there, and she passed in 2008. But right before she died, she could only move her eyes, and she was an artist. I got out the paints one day. She wanted to paint. All she could do was move her eyes. And what she did was move her eyes in the direction that she wanted me to move the paint. And we made 2 paintings together after a few hours, and this is one of them. This one is called Native Heritage, and this one is about honoring my own part of me that is Native. A section of the book is on our out-of-the-ordinary experiences of the divine, or just out-of-the-ordinary experiences. And this one is part of my section on that, experiencing some things that I really didn't know how to understand at the time. This one is called Chaos, and I call it good chaos, because part of our process in dealing with trauma is chaos. Part of it is just, we embrace the things that happen to us. We have to do a lot of work to overcome it. And part of that work is very chaotic and scary, frightening, lonely work. And this painting represents the chaos in that. This next painting I call Between Trauma and Redemption. So something really awful happens to us. We do a lot of work, and then something good comes. And that something good coming is what I'm calling redemption. And it's something good that happens to us that wouldn't have happened if the hard stuff didn't come our way. In our country today, in our families, in our country, in our own hearts, there's so much polarization. The Republicans and Democrats fighting, the blacks and whites fighting, the families polarized. And this painting represents that for me. And I think trauma is at the root of a lot of the polarization. So I call it the Civil War of the heart. This one I call the circle of life. I feel like if we're polarized and the far right goes far enough to the right and the left goes far enough to the left, they kind of meet each other. create a tension. And in that tension, there's energy. And we have a choice. Do we want to create in that energy, or does it become destructive? But that's what I call the circle of life. This one came recently, and I called it The Cosmos Sends Love to the Cross, Bringing Equality for All. Christianity has been a source of division across the world for centuries, and a source of love and joy for other people across the world. And this one, in me, it brings all that together. It brings it together and just says the cosmos, some people would say God, sends love to the cross and brings equality to all people. And this one also represents love from the cosmos, God's love coming toward us. This one represents what happens when we do our work, we do our trauma work, we begin to create the new life that comes after, whether it's through art, dancing, writing, making a garden, having a baby, building a family, whatever the new life is after the trauma. This one represents the beauty that starts to come out of the darkness that we've been experiencing. This one I just call Angels Dancing because I feel like there's angels out there to support us of various kinds, whether they're our neighbors or our parents or whoever the angels are, they're dancing. This one just is about me and what I do every morning when the sun rises. I want to dance because the sun came up again, and I say, thank you, God, for another day to do the best I can. Left, right, breathe and pray. And this one represents how I feel like we're all connected throughout the universe. When we do our work, after a while, a deep calm comes, and I call it deep calm beneath the stormy sea. And after we do our work, we also grow. That's a big part of what happens, is a growth that happens. And I call this one, Cosmos Sends Love and Growth to All of Us. And this one I call Great Spirit Sits Waiting and Says Welcome. And to me, that just represents the being that God, Great Spirit, whatever your name for something bigger than ourselves is waiting and says welcome. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who came and for just hearing me talk about my work. And I'm just feeling so blessed to have this book and these paintings that were given to me to share with you today. So thank you so much.